It's 3:06 a.m. on February 25th, 1942, and the sky over Los Angeles has erupted. Air raid sirens are screaming across the county as blinding searchlights sweep through the dark. The 37th Coast Artillery Brigade is unleashing a massive barrage into the night. Over the next hour, American forces will pump nearly 1,400 rounds of heavy 12.8-pound anti-aircraft shells directly into the airspace above millions of sleeping citizens. Down on the ground, the panic is lethal. People are fleeing through blacked-out streets, resulting in traffic accidents that kill 3 civilians. 2 more die from stress-induced heart attacks amidst the deafening roar of the artillery. The defenders are convinced they are fighting a massive Japanese air armada. But when the sun finally rises and the smoke clears, the truth is far more unsettling. There were no enemy planes. The military had waged a spectacular, deadly battle against an enemy manufactured entirely by their own fear. To understand how a city could hallucinate an entire invasion, we have to look at the psychological state of the American West Coast. Less than 3 months prior, the surprise attack on Pearl Harbor had shattered the nation's sense of security. The anxiety reached a boiling point on the evening of February 23rd. A Japanese submarine surfaced in the Santa Barbara Channel and spent 20 minutes shelling the Elwood oil field. The physical damage was minimal, but the psychological impact was devastating. Residents truly believed a mainland invasion was imminent. The coast was locked down with nightly curfews and strict blackouts. Wild rumors circulated about offshore aircraft carriers and enemy spies infiltrating the local population, turning Southern California into a highly combustible environment. Cognitive scientists refer to this as a powerful prior framework for understanding. The citizens and soldiers were so thoroughly primed to expect an attack that their brains were ready to interpret any harmless, ambiguous stimuli as a hostile threat. At 2:15 a.m., military radar picked up an anomaly 100 miles west of Los Angeles. Anti-aircraft batteries were put on green alert. 6 minutes later, the target drifted closer to the coast. The regional controller ordered a total blackout across the city grid. In the dark, imagination took over. The information center was suddenly swamped with calls from terrified residents reporting enemy planes passing overhead, even though the original radar target seemed to have vanished. The spark that lit the powder keg came at 3:06 a.m. Observers spotted a faint, glowing red flare drifting through the sky over Santa Monica. Without waiting for fighter planes to verify the target, 4 anti-aircraft batteries opened up with their .50 caliber machine guns and heavy artillery. Other batteries heard the firing and blindly joined in, creating an irreversible cascade of ordnance across the county. They had trapped themselves in a feedback loop. As the artillery fired, the shells burst in the sky, creating puffs of smoke. The probing searchlights illuminated those smoke bursts, which the gunners on the ground mistook for enemy aircraft. They were firing at the smoke of their own ammunition. The mysterious forces parading across the sky were not Japanese bombers. They were stray meteorological weather balloons and radar testing balloons towing reflective metal wires. To test the new coastal radar, crews had released these balloons offshore, but the nightly onshore breeze simply pushed them back toward the city. The military was unloading its arsenal on its own testing equipment. This maps the staggering volume of the response. 1,440 anti-aircraft rounds fired that night, each weighing 12.8 pounds. And everything that goes up must come down. Nearly 18,000 pounds of shrapnel fell directly onto the streets of Los Angeles. Despite the reality of slow drifting balloons, the psychological framework held firm. Eyewitnesses swore they saw swarms of up to 50 distinct planes, flying in close formation at speeds exceeding 200 miles per hour. Yet, after hours of continuous firing, not a single enemy plane crashed. No enemy bombs were ever dropped. The invading armada was entirely a projection of an anxious populace. The all-clear finally sounded at 7:21 a.m. Hours later, Secretary of the Navy Frank Knox stepped in front of the press and flatly dismissed the event as a false alarm triggered by war nerves. But the next day, Secretary of War Henry Stimson offered a completely different explanation. He suggested that commercial planes operated by enemy agents might have been used to generate panic. This blatant contradiction between the Army and the Navy bred immediate public suspicion. That suspicion found an anchor when the Times published a heavily retouched photograph of the searchlights. Graphic artists painted the beams to improve contrast, creating a bright shape looking exactly like an alien spacecraft. That single modified image birthed decades of extraterrestrial lore, inspiring elaborate conspiracy theories, and forged top-secret documents with enthusiasts claiming the government hid the recovery of an interplanetary craft. There likely was an element of suppression, but it had nothing to do with aliens. A fractured military leadership was simply trying to mask profound incompetence and the deep embarrassment of a completely uncontrolled friendly fire incident. Pulling back from the UFO mythology, we are left with the physical reality of Los Angeles in the daylight, a city scarred by shrapnel and a population crippled by intense suspicion. The terror of that night hardened public paranoia into absolute certainty. People were convinced an unseen enemy was actively plotting against them, living in their own neighborhoods. This mass hysteria provided immense political momentum. It accelerated the execution of Executive Order 9066, which President Roosevelt had signed just days before the Phantom Raid. The historical result was devastating. Fueled by the blind terror of nights like February 24th, the government authorized the forced removal and incarceration of 120,000 Japanese Americans, 2/3 of whom were United States citizens. The Battle of Los Angeles is a haunting record of the dangers of collective panic. When a society becomes terrified enough, it will readily invent the monsters it fears, and innocent people will pay the ultimate price.